Welcome, my name's Hiram Paul Vickery. Most people call me Paul. You're more than welcome to do so. Thank you for coming out today for my presentation on my independent study project, which I did for Corbin University. That was within my bachelor's degree. And within that independent study project, I was given 3 options to choose from. Option number 1 was program design and implementation. Option number 2 was agency experience. Option number 3 was original research. I chose option number 2, agency experience. The reason for this was it gave me the benefit of being able to do original research and program design and implementation within my choice. The sponsoring organization that I did my independent study project with is known as the FLN, or the Frontier Leadership Network. The Frontier Leadership Network works with those who are physically and or mentally challenged, and they promote peer support within the 14 counties in Eastern Oregon. They network it. That way they find what works in one county and they move it on and try it in another county. That way it raises the level of wellness of those who are physically and or mentally challenged. They're the people that the Frontier Leadership Network, that I'll refer to from now on as the FLN, works as. And those that are physically and or mentally challenged, I'll just refer to as a target population for the better part. Within that, I looked at what I needed to do. I researched my community within the expectations the agency had for me was to design a program for peer support, design it and implement it within my community. And I needed to first research the community and find the best way to reach out to them and let them become aware that there are those in the community that have physical and or mental challenges that do need support. And we do have a low level of support for that target population within this community. So I researched the size of the hall that I would need to get everybody together at one time, because within my research it indicated that if I went from person to person, it wouldn't work very well, or organization to organization. I could put up flyers, that wouldn't work really well either. I needed to address the whole community together at once as a whole. So I researched the different buildings and areas where I could hold what I would call a community awareness seminar. I also had a peer support training seminar that took place on the following night. That way I could get the peers together from the first night and start putting together some groups. But back to the community awareness seminar, what I did there was I had a co-facilitator that I had trained up that would help me reach out to the community and best explain to the community of what peer support is. A lot of people really don't understand that concept. Peers are 2 or more like people with like life experiences. I'll use an example of 2 people fishing along the Columbia River, 2 fishermen. One guy, he's catching a bunch of fish. Right downstream from him, there's another guy that's not catching a thing. The 2 of them have a conversation together, and the gentleman that's catching a lot of fish shares his information with the guy that's not catching very many fish. And within that, the guy that's not catching very many fish takes some of this information, some of these tools, techniques that the first gentleman has shared with them, and he applies those to, you know, his fishing life there, and he starts catching a bunch of fish. So the one pier then just supported the second pier. Well, within working with the mentally and or physically challenged people, that's the whole idea in getting them together in groups, is that they can best support each other that way, or find a higher level of support. This also saves the taxpayers a ton of money, as there's not as much crisis calls, you know, out to the police, 911, emergency room visits, EMT vehicles running out to pick these people up, to take them up to the emergency room. There's less substance abuse, people feeling the need to drink alcohol or use drugs because they're having life difficulties. That works real well. So within that, I had planned to have a co-facilitator there to help me present this to the public, and I also invited a professional that works at a mental health agency in Umatilla County, as we don't have a mental health agency here in Oregon that can effectively work with people, so they go up to Umatilla County to get their mental health needs met there. And he's the professional that I brought down has seen the results from peer support. He's watched the peer support group movement, and he's seen the level of wellness in that group of people raise up, and I figured he could best relate that to the community as well. Well, unfortunately, we did this, the community awareness seminar was scheduled for January 10th. We had an ice storm that started on January 9th. The original co-facilitator had become ill and wasn't going to be able to make it. I had to retrain another co-facilitator over the phone in another neighboring county, and within that, because of the ice storm, she couldn't make it either. So I used this time valuably down within the community awareness seminar, as I was able to better explain what peer support was, and you know, get a little bit more in depth with that, as the professional speaker, the guest speaker that I was bringing in, he was a few minutes late as well. Everything went off quite well. Everybody got the idea. They understood what peer support was. They were able to relate to those that are physically and or mentally challenged aren't just a group by themselves. That everybody in life has physical challenges, such as people with diabetes, and such as people that have mental challenges, you know, such as depression, loss of a loved one, something like that. People go up to mental health agencies just for such issues as, you know, depression, so on and so forth. So everybody found a higher level of equality amongst that, and within that, I was surprised to see the outcome. There was our library committee, they stepped up. As you know, here in Oregon, we have a school bus that is our library. However, fortunately enough, a new library is being built. As I said, the community, or the library committee, stepped up and said that they would be able to provide a room for peer support meetings to take place. That was a wonderful start, I believe. And as well, we have what's called the Oregon Multicultural Arts Center, and their board of committees, or their board and committees there within, also stepped up and offered to help with peer support within that. And the new Irrigan Library is almost in completion state right now. It's looking wonderful. We'll have a great place to meet there. That was one of the benefits of having this community seminar that came up. Another benefit was that's the IMAC Center, or the Irrigan Multicultural Arts Center. This is where we had members of IMAC, or the Irrigan Multicultural Arts Center, step forward and say that they would be interested in helping support the Irrigan peers, the target population, those who are physically and or mentally challenged, support them in arts, in different groups, in different art classes, in different forms such as painting or, music or, theater, whichever. And so doors started opening almost immediately. It was just wonderful. Within that, there was other members of the community there. We have a couple parks in Irrigan. There's our children's park here, and that's from one angle of it. Right next to it, we have a skate park, and there's another view of the skate park. And if you look way over here in the background, right about there, that's where the library is. So this is all kind of intertwined together in a row. And it's really neat because there's also from, let's see, right there, the slide before, you can see that path that's moving along there. Within one of the members that was there in the community, happened to be the mayor, and he said that he was working on expanding this walking path and looping it around, even a third park that's being planned, that there would be a complete circular track that we could form a walking group, as they have a walking group up in Umatilla County in Hermiston, and that works out real well. They meet a couple times a week. It's good healthy exercise. They're able to talk and relate to each other. It's just a good time. And it was just so wonderful. These are just all of the wonderful highlights within this. And that's the site where the mayor's talking about putting in the new Peace Park, which he calls the Peace Park. I'd like to call it a Serenity Park myself, but what it's going to be is it's going to be bermed up and just a peaceful place for people to meet, park benches and so on and so forth, and a couple picnic tables. That's another place where the, target population or the different peer groups can meet. And if you notice, there's that path there. It still goes around too. It just really warmed my heart to see these people step forward and, be willing to support, the peers, those that are physically and or mentally challenged in their community, to not let them suffer in a seclusion by themselves, and at the same time it benefits everybody. In fact, there's been peers that have been invited to come and volunteer up in some of the different organizations within the community, and that's already started taking place. They're working out wonderfully. They're finding usefulness for themselves to build self-worth. It just couldn't have worked out any better. And within that, the peer support training seminar that took place just after that worked out better. We're putting together peer support groups, and now we've even got another idea from another person that was there and heard and took over. He happens to have a greenhouse. He wants to remain anonymous, and he thought that we should have a community garden. Irrigan's always wanted a community garden, and unfortunately water is expensive. A piece of property was donated within that, And within that, so was the water, so it wouldn't cost anybody any money. And the gentleman that wishes to remain anonymous has a greenhouse. All of our plants have been started, quite a variety of vegetable plants, and are ready to plant at this point of time. And we've put out our flyers for the Irrigan Community Garden, and we're getting a list of people together that will step up right alongside with the peers or the target population, and that way there's an interaction between the target population and the community. And in fact, there's a picture of the community garden itself. It's tilled, but we're still waiting for everything to get, for the weather to get better to where it's not freezing, to where we can actually put the plants in. At this point in time, I know I gave you guys pens and pads so you could go ahead and write down any questions, and I kind of filled you in ahead of time, you know, that I'd have a question and answer period at this point at the end of my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
I do have a question.
Yeah?
Okay, so what are one of the ways that you're putting out the efforts to bring this all together? How are you going to reach all the people in the area if you want this to be heard and to show that there is action taken in the area to support what you're planning to do?
Well, we evaluated the program in multiple different ways to find out what would work within that. Number one, we broadcast on KOHU, which is a radio station. Number two, there's a newsletter that's put out by the Chamber of Commerce. We use that as well. Number three, it's a small community. Word of mouth gets around. You know, the community does know about that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that I think that is a good answer.
Any more questions?
What would the role of the frontier leadership be in facilitating some sort of a local mentorship organization?
Well, what their role there is seeing the development of the programs here. If they work here and there's another county where they don't have any programs like that in place, they can then try out what works here in another county to try to raise the level of wellness for those that are physically and or mentally challenged in that county. Does that work?
Would some sort of certification be required for people that are working with special needs people?
Well, I happen to be a certified peer support specialist myself. It's good to have a certified peer support specialist to help form the groups, but the groups can pretty much take off after they've been formed and they've been working for a time or two.
Okay.
Well, I thank you all for coming out today, and again, I really appreciate you guys, and come join the community garden.